Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to another broadcast from Xanadu Gallery and BarneyDavey.com. I'm your host, or one of your co-hosts, Jason Horejs, owner of Xanadu Gallery, and many of you have joined us before, but we're glad to have you all here this afternoon. I want to let you know as we get started here, my co-host, Barney Davey, as we were trying to log in together prior to the broadcast, was having difficulty getting audio to come through. So he's working on that right now and will join us just as soon as that audio comes into play. You'll probably hear him jump in and say, "Hello, Jason, can you hear me?" Kind of thing as we get going.
Jason, can you hear me?
There we go. Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect.
So there we go, not too long into the broadcast. We were sweating it for a moment there, but we knew that the technology would come through in the end, and if that didn't work, then Barney would come through in the end. So welcome, Barney. Good to be here with you again.
Yeah, likewise, Jason. Once again, a month passed by in a blink of an eye, and here we are almost at the end of the year, bearing down on Thanksgiving and the Christmas holiday, and wow.
Yeah, it's crazy how quickly the time is going by, and I think especially for us here at Xanadu, we've had a very busy month. Sales are picking up. We've had our best, I'd say our best end of October, beginning of November that we've had in years. And from what I'm hearing from artists around the country, I don't know, Barney, maybe you're hearing this too, it seems like just overall there are more buyers out, more sales happening. Overall, I'm hearing more and more positive news from the art market. So I think it's, I think it's very encouraging for so long we've been stuck in the economy's bad and getting better and the market's still bad. And it just seems like things are really starting to pick up their pace a little bit.
I see that not only in the art market, but just kind of all over. There's a consumer optimism or confidence is up. That was a report that was just out recently. The stock market's been going through the roof. I think whether you're red or blue, just having the elections behind us now and know that that's settled for at least 2 years and we can get away from that and concentrate on some other things. Just all sorts of things, plus just a lot of pent-up. I'm sick and tired of being, beat down, and I'm ready to go out and spend a little money. My home values are up or steady, and just overall optimism all around. And if the art market, if you're experiencing it, then it has to be good, because you're not going to be ever on the leading edge of what turns things around. If it's filtering down to retail art locations like yours, and you're seeing that strong with optimism and enthusiasm, things are going well. I couldn't be happier about it. I feel the same way myself. I'm tired of trying to deal with, how to. I wrote a blog post a few years ago that was titled "The Good is the New Great," and I think we finally are overcoming that feeling that so many of us had, that things are good and that is not great, but it seems like that's all we're going to get for now. We've seemed to have gone beyond that, so yay.
Yeah, hopefully we're getting back into the great is the new great. So yeah, and I think that that kind of segues nicely into our conversation today and our topic. As the market starts to pick up, and hopefully it's true. Galleries and art shows and festivals and all of your other sales efforts, it's going to be valuable for our audience to be able to better leverage these improving circumstances and work to sell more art. And what we're talking about tonight is recognizing the different kinds of art buyers. And of course, we put that title on this, and that gives us a pretty broad latitude of what we want to talk about. And I think I want to talk a little bit about some specific personality types and buyers that I encounter, but I think we could also talk about just the different avenues, the different categories of buyers that are out there, and cover a lot of territory there. We got a lot of ground to cover in an hour, and a lot of you have sent in questions. I think it's a good idea as we get started just to mention again that there are a couple of ways that you can ask us questions during the broadcast. You should notice in the video that you're watching right now in the upper right corner a little box that says Q&A, and if you click on that, it'll allow you to type in your question And we can see that come up, and at the end we'll try and answer as many of those as possible. Also, some of you have sent in questions via email, and if you can't get the Q&A box to work in the video, you can go ahead and go back to the old reliable email and email me, Jason, at xanadugallery.com with your questions, and just be sure and indicate in the subject line that this is a question for the broadcast this afternoon. So Barney, I guess without further ado, we should dive in and just start talking about the different kinds of buyers.
Yeah, well, you mentioned you know, personality types, and those are also, depending on whose system you're of learning these kind of things, they can also be called social styles or personality styles. So there's a lot of different tests that you can take. In my 30-plus years of selling different things, a lot of advertising for art publishing and art trade shows, I took a lot of sales training, formalized sales training, and one of the most impressive ones I took was something called the Wilson Learning System, and that is based on a personality test. I can't remember the name of it. But essentially it divides up people into 4 categories, and then you can have you know, be strong in one category and also have influences from other categories. But those 4 categories were A1 driver, those are CEO types, typically expressives, those are usually, you think of a salesperson, somebody who's got kind of an outsized personality. Amiables, those are people who just need the reassurance of going along with the crowd. And analyticals, that's the green eye shade guy who wants to make sure that all the numbers add up. And there are different, you know, nuances off of that and different ways to describe those things. But if you begin to understand what the personality types are, then you can begin to adjust what you are saying and asking and how you're dealing with someone so that you put yourself in their comfort zone, which it enables you to enhance the conversation. You're not using any trickery here. You're just making yourself more available to this person's social style, which should allow you to get further into a conversation and perhaps push that sale along to a decision.
Yeah, in essence, you're giving your potential buyers more of what they need and more of what they want from an interaction standpoint. I think this is so critical for artists to understand, well, and obviously for anyone in any kind of sales opportunity, but for artists in particular, and you might say, well, you know, I don't really spend a lot of time interacting with people, but even in just the brief interactions that you might have, you know, certainly if you're participating in art shows and festivals, this is something you really need to work on and study. And like Barney mentioned, and goodness, there are many books out there and programs that you can follow that'll give you a little bit better insight. But also, just if you're showing in galleries and you're going to be going to gallery openings, you know, or even just in your day-to-day interaction with people and having the opportunity to share and express yourself about your art, it's just critical that you be able to understand that, first of all, there are different personality types. But second of all, I think the other thing that happens to many of us, and certainly happened to me when I began selling art, you know, almost 20 years ago, when you're in a position where you are focused on and working towards selling something, I think the natural tendency for all of us is to become self-centered, to think about our performance, and to think that the sale depends on what we're saying or what we're doing. And I have found that it's quite the opposite, that instead we should be focused on what our customers' needs are, what their wants are, and that the more we can focus on them, the more we can get them talking and interacting, the more likely we are to be able to move toward a sale.
I agree more. I think, Jason, it would be a good idea if, and I can't give you a resource right now, maybe we could post one sometime in the future.
Oh, Barney, I think I'm losing you a little bit. I lost video, and your audio is chopping up. Yeah, and I'm starting to get a little bit of echo right along with it. So you may have a slow internet speed or something. We'll wait for it to catch up and let you jump in. I've got you frozen or black screen right now. Um, Let me just mention some of the key personality types and things that I've run into, and I'm sure you've run into if you've had the opportunity to interact with customers, like I say, in any kind of circumstance. And a lot of times it doesn't take very long when someone walks through our gallery door, and I have this experience on a day-by-day basis where one of the very first things that I'm trying to do after introducing myself is to start to assess who is this that I'm talking to? What is their personality type? What kind of interaction and feedback do they want from me? Are they highly engaged and interested in conversing, or are these people who are kind of more standoffish and would prefer to have their space? And so my natural tendency now, and one that I've kind of developed over the years, is that I almost immediately as someone comes into the gallery, and you could apply this to yourself, when someone approaches your work at an art show or festival or approaches your work at a gallery opening, I want to be outgoing, and I want to if I'm going to have a default, I want to default on the side of giving them a lot of interaction and a very warm welcome to the gallery. And then start to ask them some questions and start to get a little bit of sense. And with some people, you have kind of the standoff buyer, the one who isn't really looking for a lot of interaction. And boy, I can get that vibe pretty quickly. As I introduce myself, they're not maybe forthcoming with their names, and I have to ask for it. They'll say something like, "Oh, we're just looking around. We'll let you know if we have any questions." And I will immediately react to that and start backing off a little bit. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to just completely back off and let them walk around the gallery, never to interact with me again. If I notice that they're looking at a particular piece, I may gently step in and start to tell a little story about the artist or the particular piece of artwork that they're looking at. And in essence, I'm just trying to warm them up a little bit and move them towards a more open conversation. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you have people that come into the gallery and are very talkative and warm, and that conversation happens very easily. I still try to get them talking as much as possible, finding out where they're from, what their background is, what they're looking for at the gallery, and just try and engage them throughout their encounter in the gallery. With these buyers, there can actually be an opposite danger. You have the people who don't talk at all and who don't want to interact and who you have a hard time dealing with. But people who are very talkative, the danger can be that it becomes all about the interaction and the relationship, and they don't even look at the art or talk about the art. And so then, with those buyers, you kind of have to start steering the conversation and the interaction towards particular pieces and try and see if you can gauge their interest in a particular artwork, or get the conversation moving in that direction. Barney, do I have you back? Do you want to jump in?
Hi there. Yes, I went away for a minute, courtesy of Google technology, one way or another. You can't get the best free stuff anymore these days. Just kidding. I love Google and the Hangouts, but there are some issues with it, and I shouldn't complain. I take webinars from GoToWebinar that you used, and I helped you with it for many years, Jason, and people pay a lot of money for that, and it's still very buggy at times where, there's all kinds of issues with getting the second speaker on and so forth. So I could hear you as you were going through that, and one of the questions that came to my mind is, do you consciously, have you done this so long now that it's not even top of mind, you're just reacting to the situation, so that when you see somebody who's maybe skeptical or enthusiastic or deliberate, that one of those kind of social styles, that you start adapting how you are going to interact with them right away? Is it a conscious effort on your part, or was it at one point and it's more just kind of baked into what you're doing now, as opposed to
yeah, I definitely think at this point it is a little bit more of just a natural flow of things, where I'm just always gauging without even thinking about it, how much I'm going to interact with somebody based on the feedback that they're giving me. I think initially, when I started in the business, and I still see this among a lot of salespeople, the tone and tenor and pace of a lot of salespeople's interaction is exactly the same no matter who walks through the door. It's the same song and dance, a lot of the same. Let's talk about where you're from and what the weather is and those kind of things. And it can sometimes not only come across as a little bit tone deaf. I mean, luckily the buyer isn't seeing that interaction each and every time, but if you're not careful, it comes across as insincere, and I think that's why it's so important to take cues from the person that you're speaking to. Watch their body language. Are they looking you in the eye when they're talking to you? Are they trying to move on? And just try and pick up on those cues, and like I say, give people the attention that they want. They are in my gallery, and so I get to have a little bit of control in the sense that I'm not going to just let somebody breeze in and breeze out completely unmolested. My job is to try and engage people and try to work towards selling a piece of art that they'll love and want. And if they're here in the gallery, I'm going to assume that they have some level of interest in art, and that something that they saw through my window or front door brought them in, and so I'm just going to try and engage them as much as possible. But I think you're right, Barney. I think over time, it's just people skills. You just start to learn how to interact and engage with people, and you become more comfortable in your own skin as the more and more that you do this. And as that happens, it just becomes kind of second nature to you.
Yeah, after I took the Wilson Learning System training, I made a conscious effort to try to identify personality styles when I started interacting with my customers and prospects again, so that it was kind of in the front of my mind, and that I would consciously try to change my way of reacting to them so that I wouldn't, as I was talking about earlier, make them more comfortable. If I was with somebody who was expressive, if I were in a gallery situation, I would want them to feel good about, if we're talking about this art, how fantastic this is going to make them look, and they're going to enjoy it, and they're going to love showing it to all of their friends, and just, paint them in that picture of how this is going to make them feel and how it's going to make them look, that they made this fabulous choice to buy this wonderful piece of art. And that's, if on the other hand, if I'm talking to somebody who's a CEO type, and he likes to make decisions quickly, and he just needs some basic information, a little bit of confidence that this is the artist is worthy of his time and money, let's get to the point and consummate the deal. On the other hand, those amiable types, and when I'd run into them, I'd know that they would need some background information on how long this artist has been in business, and that we've never had any returns, and there's dozens and dozens, maybe even hundreds of people who are buying and enjoying the art, or in different galleries. Just they need a lot of a social assurance that they're making a good decision. And if you can start to react, you need to be able to recognize that in someone, and then temper or tone your conversation to who you believe or who you've ascertained they might be a little bit. You'd be surprised how well that actually works. And again, this isn't any trickery, it's neuroscience to a degree. You're just making people feel more comfortable. You still have to, ultimately, they're adults, they're going to come to a decision on their own. Do I want to own this piece of art? Can I afford it? And if so, let's make a deal.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes I think you mentioned a couple really key points there, Barney. You mentioned the type that just wants to get in and get business done and make it happen. The more decisive CEO type, and I think sometimes those buyers can be a little bit intimidating, and maybe a little bit off-putting, and you might think that, oh boy, it makes me really nervous and uptight, and I don't like working with those kind of people. But once you understand kind of just where they're coming from and what their approach is, and you can start to appreciate the benefits of each of the different personality types, you can realize that, hey, actually, they don't want to chat up a storm or anything, but they're kind of fun because they just get right to the sale, pull out their credit card, it's done. It's not that they're being rude or brusque. That's just how they approach life. And I think it's really important. We all come with a certain set of predispositions and prejudgments about the world and about people. And I think if we can try and set that aside a little bit and just realize that no personality type is necessarily better or worse than the other. They just have different characteristics, and it's a little bit of a puzzle and kind of fun to play with it. And we're not always going to be successful. There are times where I have people come into the gallery now, or my director has someone come in, and there's just something about my particular personality type or her particular personality type that doesn't and cannot and will not click with that particular person, no matter how hard we try. And we just rub each other the wrong way for some reason. And so be it. We'll move on to the next one. And I try not to let that get under my skin or think about it too much. You're just constantly looking for opportunities to serve your customers better, to better understand them, and by doing that, you're going to become an ever better salesperson.
Well, they're doing you a service in a way. There's this saying that you have to hit so many no's before you get a yes, and that's true. Otherwise, everybody would bat 1,000. So if somebody, actually, in my opinion, if they quickly disqualify themselves for whatever reason, and you realize that this is a fruitless effort, I'm not going to be able to make a deal or even possibly warm up this person up to get close to making a deal, then you can put them in the no column and move on. So thank you. You moved me one no closer to my next yes. And I'd like to comment a little bit on what you were talking about with the CEO types, because I believe for many artists in particular, and many salespeople in particular for that matter, that A1 driver CEO type, let's get the thing done fast, is an intimidating style. Especially if that's not your own style. And what I found is, and that's not my particular style, what I found was that those kind of people respect confidence, and if they're throwing what seems like a little bit of attitude at you, they're kind of just expecting you to stand up, stiffen your back a little bit and lean into the conversation and hold your own. As soon as you show that kind of respect for yourself and them, I've always found, well, not always, but many times I found that was the breakthrough that I needed to. The relationship we went to another level now. It was established. I respect you, and I respect myself enough that I expect you to also respect me. That's kind of a long-winded statement, but you'll be amazed again. Stand up to those people with confidence. You can be firm or tough and tender, however you want to put it, and you will find that instead of being intimidated, that you actually have progressed along to another level in your relationship. I'll lay one more thing on you. Having worked at GoDaddy in the call center, taking thousands of calls, helping people fix everything from their hosting to their email to their domain settings and what have you, there was something we called the ECM. It was a shortcut for East Coast mentality. And if you live on the East Coast, you know what I'm talking about, or if you've dealt with people who are from New York or New Jersey, they've got a different social style than people from Arkansas or St. Louis, where I'm from. It's, that's more a little hardcore, and St. Louis a little more amiable. It's not, people aren't being rude, they're not being nasty, it's just a different personality style. So if you learn how to react to that, then you de-stress yourself greatly, and you can get further into the conversation where you actually have a chance to talk about what's important to you. Let me show you some art.
Yeah, and again, you hit on a couple of key points, and I think that
anybody from the East Coast there.
Well, and again, that's something that in Scottsdale we get a lot of visitors from the East Coast, and it's something that we're dealing with every day. And And sometimes you almost can't help but feel a little bit, oh, geez, why are they so brusque and they want everything and they want it now and jump, and after a while, you just kind of become accustomed to it. And if it's been a while since you've talked to somebody from the East Coast, or let's put it this way, some of the people from the East Coast.
Okay. Not to slam the whole.
Yes, exactly. Not to put anybody into too tight a category, but if it sometimes just takes some getting used to them again, and finding out how to get in. But I think I want to go back to something that you mentioned, and I think this is just critical for anyone in a position where they're talking about their art or trying to help someone buy a piece of art, and that's confidence. Barney, you mentioned the importance of projecting confidence to the type A personalities, but I think it's actually important for every kind of interaction that you're going to have that you possess a certain level of confidence about yourself, and about your own work if you're selling your own work, or about the artwork that you're selling. Your confidence comes across as expertise, and it can be a little bit of a fine line. I try to project confidence without projecting cockiness or anything like that. But I just want people to know that if they have a question, I'm the one who's either going to be able to answer that question for them, or I'm going to be able to point them in the right direction and find the answer. If they want to buy something, I'm the guy who's here to help them do that. If they need to negotiate a sale, if they want to work on the pricing a little bit, I'm the buck stops with me, and I can help you, and we can make this happen. And the more confidence that you project to your potential buyer, the more likely they are to kind of just move along with you. People are drawn to that kind of confidence. And I know, Barney, you and I have talked about in past broadcasts, that while there are all different types of buyers, there are also all different types of salespeople. And I'm not suggesting that you need to become something that you're not, or put on a show that's not your true personality. But if you can take the best elements of who you are, and if you're an introvert, maybe the best element is the fact that you have the great ability to listen and to process and take in information, and then interact with confidence. I just think that the more that you can let people know that you're listening to them, you're hearing what they're saying, and you have answers and you can help them, the more successful that you're going to be as a salesperson over time. And I've seen all different types of salespeople. I consider myself, and maybe I'm less so than I was when I started out, I definitely started out as an introvert, and afraid of public speaking, and interacting with strangers was not where I was most comfortable. But I found my comfort points, and found that I love art so much, and I love talking about art so much, that even though I could be nervous about talking to someone, if I got onto my footing that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to art, I could be very confident there. And I think that's true of artists too. If you have things to say about your technique and your style and your subject matter, kind of comfort zones that you can easily move into, you can project that same kind of confidence as well.
Most of us are not born glib talkers that can just do off-the-cuff, extemporaneous, lengthy responses to anything and just feel natural in any setting. You've got to feel that level of confidence that you have by working on it. And you were desirous of, this is something I want to succeed at, so I'm going to overcome my natural tendencies, which are to be, maybe withdrawn and not engage, or back down when the situation's tough, or I'm dealing with a more difficult type of personality, or just speaking in public when there's a group. All of those things that are, throw fear in our hearts, or we get worried about what people are going to think about us, and we empathize with, how would I feel if somebody were saying this to me, and all these things run through your head, and it's all just a negative script that you need to learn how to turn off. And I think one of the best ways for many artists to do that, and you were kind of alluding to that, Jason, is know what you feel and be able to articulate and express how you feel about your art, what made you decide to want to create this kind of art, maybe why you want to be an artist, that you should have kind of a running dialogue that you can go, it's kind of a go-to thing. You may be kind of tired of hearing it, but it works over and over and over again. You can refine that and hone it to not unlike a politician to some degree. They have their talking points, and they stick to those. And you can do the same thing, but unlike a politician who might be skirting the truth or just avoiding the question, you don't have to worry about any of those things. You're talking about something that is truly authentic, that's coming out of you. When you are able to express how you feel that way, and you can, if you don't feel confident or comfortable doing it now, you just need to practice. You will get better at it over time if you work at it. And the other part of it is maybe take that personality test, get a better idea of where you're at, and then also learn to, we haven't really talked about this, and we're kind of going, this goes into selling skills rather than identifying buyers. But if you begin to understand and have kind of some go-to questions on how you're going to interact with people so that you can get them to open up, and it isn't a script of, hi, my name's Barney, I got some art, I would like to sell it to you. Instead, what do you do to open a dialogue? How do you get some open-ended questions going? And eventually you'll have anywhere from a half a dozen to a dozen different ways that you can comfortably approach somebody, and if you're listening to what we're saying and taking it in, you'll probably adjust what those questions are based on what you are observing from this person, how they're dressed, how they're reacting to you, eye contact, some of the other things that you mentioned earlier. But get comfortable with who you are, and then get comfortable with expressing that and questions for potential buyers, and now you're leveling the field and giving yourself a really great opportunity to progress a conversation along to the point where asking for the sale becomes a natural for you.
I've observed, both in the gallery, having the opportunity to watch my salespeople work, watching myself work, but also when we're having openings and the artist is present at a reception. I've noticed that some of my most successful artists are those artists who have had a ton of practice, like you've talked about. They've done the shows and festivals, and or have maybe had their own store and have had a lot of interaction that way. And this is definitely a skill, working with people and understanding the different types of buyers. It's a skill that develops with practice and develops over time. And you're not necessarily going to be great at it at first, but if I think that if you're making a conscious effort to become better at understanding how people work and what they think and how they think, if you're consciously working toward that, it's inevitable that you're going to become better and better at it. And put yourself out there, take those opportunities, and it doesn't even have to be initially in sales opportunities. Go participate in some art events at your local museum and try to get to know people there. Just try and put yourself out there more than you are at present, and give yourself more opportunities to practice. And then as you're at, Barney was talking about this, but as you're in situations where you're talking about yourself and your art, what you're inevitably going to find is that there are about 6 to 10, 12 questions that you're going to hear thousands of times throughout your career. And we certainly hear them here in the gallery. We have a few more because we have a variety of artists, so they can come in at slightly different angles. But basically, as you interact more and more with people, you realize that the number of different pathways for your conversation to go are finite. And that you can pretty much anticipate all of the responses. And so in the gallery, we often will kind of pay attention to what those common questions are, and we'll talk with each other about what is the best way to respond to this particular question, or what's the best way, how could I have moved that person from interest to a potential buying situation? What did I do correctly, or what did I do incorrectly? Or you sold that piece, good job. Here's what I really liked about what you said. And so if you could have someone with you, a friend or a partner, spouse, in those sales situations that can give you some feedback, or potentially could be interacting with people as well, so you can see what they're doing, I think that can be invaluable to you as well as you're working towards the better interactions with people.
All good points. So it seems to me that one way or another, these I think we're well past 24 of these broadcasts, and a lot of them overlap, because kind of what you alluded to there was networking and confidence, and we've talked about a lot of these different things.
We've talked about closing.
Right. So they all sort of weave together, but that theme of confidence and the ability to articulate what you're talking about works great. I wanted to, mention something else about, besides social styles, amiable, driver, expressive, analytical. I think other things that you need to sort of start out with buyers are they decision makers? Are you actually talking to somebody who has buying authority? First, and second, do they have any money? Not everybody who walks in your gallery is really in there with the funds to be able to buy an original piece of art. Other things, are they really appreciators of art, or are they just gawkers that are passing by at the show or on art walk night? Or your questions, your observations, your experience over time help you begin to understand those things, but also questioning people. Do they own other art? Do they collect art? Do they exude, do you get some sense from talking to them that they would have some confidence in a buying decision? I think that's one of the things that holds people back from buying art, is that they haven't been guided to the decision properly by the salesperson, and the salesperson, an inexperienced salesperson, won't recognize that the buyer isn't always in control. The buyer is often looking for validation and to be told it's okay to buy this piece of art, and you as the salesperson need to be that person. You need to step up and be that person and help them make that decision. And that sounds, I know, really weird and almost contrary to a lot of artists possibly listening to this, but it's actually the truth, that you can guide the sale by asking questions, getting a sense. Maybe they don't have the greatest confidence. You need to help instill that confidence in them and validate that this is good decision. That would be far from the other side of the coin with a A1 driver, let's get the deal done type personality. But even that person might need a little bit of assurance and to be guided that, this is my top artist and this is their best piece or what have you. So being able to recognize those kind of things in a buyer and then react to them will help you ultimately sell more art, which is what we gathered here today around the computer screen for. Let's learn how to sell a little bit more art.
Yeah, and kind of building on that, I think, we've been talking about assessing your buyers and trying to judge a little bit what type of personality they are, and then Barney's just talked about qualifying them and figuring out, is this someone who could really buy. Now I want to take it to the other extreme and just caution you that you do want to be a little bit careful, because even though I've been in the business for over 20 years, selling art for over 20 years in a gallery setting, and during that time I've had the opportunity to interact with tens of thousands of people who've come through the door of the gallery. And I still to this day will sometimes make the wrong judgment. I will either assume that someone's a buyer and then they end up not being, or I'll quickly judge them and as someone who's probably not going to buy, who is just a gawker, and I'll walk away from them, and then I look over at the counter and Elaine is writing up a $30,000 sale to that buyer, something like that, where it's just, and again, this is natural too. We start to stereotype people a little bit, and sometimes those stereotypes are useful and helpful. but you also want to be very conscious that you're not doing it too quickly, or that you're not writing someone off that you shouldn't be. And if anything, the default is to give people as much service as you can, and to assume that they're going to buy, while at the same time balancing that out, that especially in a gallery setting or in an art festival or show setting, you've got to be able to move around from one group of people to the next and let everybody know that you're here and available to them. And like I say, you just want to be a little bit careful. And I'll just mention another thing that you want to be very careful of. You'll sometimes have people come into the gallery who are not dressed as well as you would expect an art buyer to be. They're not driving the car you might expect an art buyer to be driving. And it's pretty easy to dismiss those people, and I've had many experiences in the past where that person that you just did not expect to buy ended up buying. So, like I say, I just want to put that caution out there that you should be a little bit careful as you're judging people, and rightly judging them. You need to judge them in order to be able to react to them properly, but just to be careful not to cross anyone off your list before they've crossed themselves off.
I've had the chance to observe you in the gallery from time to time at different times when I've been there for openings or what have you, Jason. And I'll say something about you that I admire. And that's when you're with the person. You're with the person. There's nothing that irks me more as a consumer when I'm looking for help and I engage a salesperson who is scanning the room, not making eye contact with me, only half listening to what I'm saying, and almost you just have this feeling they're looking for a bigger fish, or they're just bored, or something. They're not in the moment with you. And when I sense that from a salesperson, I'm very disinclined, unless whatever they have is something I need and I just want to buy it and get out of there. But if it's an expensive something, like a piece of art, and I'm not getting the kind of respect that I think I'm due from the salesperson, especially since I've engaged them and asked them for, let's get into a dialogue, give me some information. If I don't get the proper respect from that salesperson, they're not getting a deal. Like I said, if I have to have it, I have to have it. I'll hold my nose and make the deal. But that, if I'm on the fence over something, and let's face it, art is discretionary, and nobody's making something that is so totally unique or very rare that you can't find a pretty close suitable replacement if you look hard enough. Not to denigrate anybody's art, but you know what I mean. You can go other places. There's a lot just on Main Street where you are. The amount of art is staggering, really. So the point here is all the buyer decisions and stuff, when you get into that moment, be in that moment. You may be thinking in the back of your mind, I need to assess this, decide how much more time I can put into it, but you never let the buyer see that from you. You stay engaged with them until you either progress to the point where there's nothing more to talk about, or you're making a sale. And you're excellent at it, and I'm sure it's something one of those skills you've honed over the years.
Well, and I think that for me, it's a lot of fun. I hesitate to use the word game, because this is very serious business. This is my livelihood. This is the livelihood of the artists that I'm representing, and so when I say the word game, I'm not using it lightly, but it's a bit of a puzzle each time to try and interact with people, and to see, each individual is different and unique, and to see what they're going to throw at you, and to think of creative ways to react to that. I think is one of the greatest challenges of the art business, and any sales business really, but especially the art sales business. And if you can kind of look at it as fun and as a challenge, rather than as a drudgery, or I just hate talking to people. If you feel that way, then it's probably good for you to have someone who is your public-facing representative, rather than you yourself interacting. And I understand completely. A lot of artists do feel like, I would rather be in the studio creating and by myself and not interacting with people. But the reality of the art business today is that, you know, a lot of times before you can get gallery representation, and even for a lot of artists who have gallery representation, you're still going to be spending a lot of time interacting with potential buyers. And the sooner that you can not only accept that but embrace it and you know, engage at a higher level in those interactions and take the challenge and put your best self forward to do it, the sooner you're going to be able to build more success and enjoy the process. And it, like I say, it is, to me anyway, it is very, very enjoyable, and I think that you can find it to be enjoyable as well.
Well, you are in person, and a sincere, authentic, genuine, friendly person. So that's who you present yourself to be when you're dealing with people in the gallery. But you also take it one more level of courtesy and respect to give them your full undivided attention while you're in that moment with them, and you're consummate professional, so you know how to slip off the hook with a buyer without leaving them feeling like we're not done here and he dumped me. So you know, that's a learned skill, but a lot of that again is just experience and confidence. And I can't encourage anybody enough to work on. You're sitting there at the easel or whatever you're carving or whatever you're doing, creating art. You're likely to be by yourself. It's a perfect time to just start practicing what you want to say and get it down to something that it doesn't become rote and it makes you sound like a robot, but that comes out of you enthusiastic, out of your authentic self, and people will respond to that. It'll help you warm them up and ultimately make them want to buy your art in ways that they won't if it's a very cold interaction and they're not getting anything from you, from the relationship that you're having with it. Are we getting close to questions?
I think we should jump into some questions now. I've gotten a few over the Q&A and some by email prior to the broadcast. But again, if you're watching live and you want to ask a question, one of the best ways to do it is to click on the Q&A box on your screen, and then you'll be able to type it in, kind of like a chat. We'll be able to see it. And if that's not working for you, then email me, jason@xanadugallery.com. And just put in the subject line that it's a question for the broadcast, and we'll try and take that. Now, Wendy asked the question. She asks, can you talk about negotiating prices and being able to respond confidently when you're not good at crunching numbers in your head? And you know, I think this alludes to, we talked a little bit about this. You know, being able to know a little bit about the personality type of the buyer. That's going to help you in the interaction you're having leading up to the sale. It's going to help you as you work to close the sale. And it's also going to help you in this scenario where there's some negotiation that occurs. And I just want to be right up front, and I've talked about this before, negotiation is a big part of the art business. You know, I'd say 9 out of 10, if not more, of the sales that we make out of the gallery have some negotiation that's going on during the closing process. And so, again, this is something that you should be practicing and thinking about before you get into that scenario and what your approach is going to be. And Wendy mentions not being good at crunching numbers in her head. I'm not good at crunching numbers in my head. I mean, maybe better than some, but still, it's not my favorite thing to do, and especially in a scenario where you're negotiating with someone, and that adds just a little bit of potentially a little bit of tension in the air, or it can anyway. You know, the last thing I would do is try and crunch any numbers in my head. And so when we're negotiating, someone either makes an offer to me or says something like, "What's your best price?" I will say something like, "Well, let me see what I can do for you," or "Let's work together and see what we can make happen." And I'll go back to my desk and work on the numbers with a calculator. there's no reason that you have to do it right on the spot, right in the moment. Instead, you should really work on it. And there's some times when I put a little bit of drama into my negotiation. I mean, sometimes they'll see me at the desk working up the numbers, and there will be some agony and ecstasy going on as I'm looking at the numbers. I'm trying to figure out what I can do for them. I want them to know that I'm really working. I'm giving it everything I've got to get them the very best value for that piece of artwork. Now, the truth is that I have certain parameters that I work in. I've established agreements with my artists that give me a certain level of latitude to how much I can negotiate. And if I go beyond those, I need to call the artist. But so in essence, I set up, typically I kind of have a script that I will run through, and we'll first make an offer at a certain percentage and then work from there if we need to with the client. And that's probably, negotiation, goodness, could be a topic for an entire broadcast. So I don't want to go into all of the mechanics for that. But in essence, Wendy, I think it's just kind of building on what we've talked about tonight, judging the other party in the negotiation, getting a little bit of sense of what they need from you, and then working through the negotiation at your pace, not feeling rushed or forced into that negotiation process.
That's where that confidence thing comes back in. In a sense, the buyer could be putting you in a desperate feeling situation, like a sale is imminent and I need to do everything as quickly as possible and not lose the buyer in the process. And that's the last thing you ever want to do. You never want to make anybody sweat. In some ways, you need to have the mentality that if I don't make this sale, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. We can't make a deal, that's okay. If you can feel centered and calm that way when you're in the heat of that moment, and not let somebody else put you in a position where you're feeling tense and have to respond immediately, do like Jason does. Find a way to break the tension a little bit, maybe move away from it, or give me a minute, I need to refer to some material, or you may not be able to crunch numbers in your head, but that doesn't mean you can't come up with that same thing that you're going to say to everybody who asks you that question. So you have your one best way of responding to that pulls the control back to you, where now the buyer's waiting on you to give an answer, and you're coming back at it from a point of confidence and calm. I'm going to give you my best reply, but I'm not going to. It's not going to be the end of the world by any means if I don't sell it. Somebody else will buy it. I mean, you might even take it away from them a little bit, depending on the piece of the art and how it is. I can do something for you, but frankly, this is, if not my masterpiece, close to one of the best pieces I've ever created. I'm really reluctant to even sell it at any point. I almost didn't bring it today, so I can do something for you, but you just need to know that. So by having some kind of response like that, you've essentially taken a little bit of that control away from the buyer, that I'm not interested in giving it away to you. I might be able to make a little deal here for you, but I love this piece. If I have to keep it, that's great. I won't mind at all. Completely.
Well, I think it's obvious. I think we need to promise ourselves that one of our broadcasts in the new year is going to be about negotiation, because that I think it's an exciting topic for both of us, and I think we could share some great information there that kind of falls outside the scope of what we want to talk about tonight. But I've got yeah, it is. I got a question from Maggie, and I'll let you take the first crack at it, Barney. She says, I find it hard as an artist to sell myself. It's much easier to sell someone else's art. Do you have any tips for selling your own art?
I understand that. When I sit down and I'm creating a blog, or I'm going on about.me or someplace, and it asks me to write a bio of, give a description or create the about page. It's really hard to talk about yourself for most people. It's just difficult to do it. So backing up to what we were talking about earlier, you need to figure out, this is something that will take some time, but you need to know how to articulate what it is about yourself, and maybe in a third person to some degree, but you need to be able to frame the answer to that question with phrases that you're comfortable with, that you've thought about, so that the last thing you want to be happening to you is you're put on the spot and you don't know what to say, and you just kind of stumble and bumble through something that sounds awful and not confident and blows the whole scenario. And it's an extension of, so what do you do? Which is, in networking, the most common question, whether you're at a networking meeting, or whether you're at somebody's getting married or some other kind of social event like that. I mean, it's just a common phrase. What do? You should have a pat answer for that. And it shouldn't come out just so canned that it just sounds like a canned answer. You should have some enthusiasm, eye contact, smiling with people when you're telling them this, but you need to think it through, write it down, hone it, and then start articulating it out loud. And if you do that often enough, this is something that you're going to carry through for the rest of your life. So if you spent a whole weekend on it until you got it down to as good as you can get it, and then keep practicing it, that's the only way you're going to get better at it, is work at it, figure out what you need to want to say, look at what other artists are saying about themselves. Hey, I resemble that. I want to appropriate that in some way and include it in what I'm saying about myself. You'll get to a point where you've got a standard one-sentence answer, and then you can articulate it out to a paragraph or two about yourself. But it should be a kind of pat response that sounds good and enthusiastic and confident.
Yeah, and I do exactly what you're talking about. Whenever I'm traveling and have the opportunity to go visit galleries, I like to go incognito. I mean, I'm not putting on sunglasses and a mustache or anything, but I like to hear other galleries' approach to how they talk about their artists, and I think it's a great idea, Barney, for artists to do the same thing. Go to the shows, go to gallery openings, listen to how artists are talking about themselves. And then I would say, also, as you're doing what Barney talked about, thinking about a fixed response that you're going to give as you begin talking about yourself and your artwork. If you need to, mentally pull yourself away a little bit and develop a split personality, so you can feel like you're not talking about yourself. You're talking about an artist who creates this artwork and who looks a lot like me and sounds a lot like me, but it's not me. I'm talking about a character, exactly. And if that helps you kind of step out of yourself, and like I say, that's kind of what I did initially in the art business, was because I'd be nervous and quaking. I'd tell myself before a big event or a show at the gallery I was working at when I very first started, I would tell myself, okay, I'm shy, I'm nervous, but that's not who I am tonight. Tonight I'm going to be the confident and outgoing person, and you can kind of become what you need to become in those scenarios. I think, Barney, we have time for about one more question, and this question comes from Karen, and it seems like we're kind of jumping into sales, but I think this all comes back to interacting with people, and so her question is, when I go to receptions, I notice that people rarely talk to anyone except the people they came with or that came to see their work. If I do likewise, it seems to me that I don't have any chance of recognizing art buyers or potential collectors. I'm not quite sure how to begin talking to people in a setting where people don't seem to want to interact with anyone but their friends or family that they came with. How do you break the ice?
How about them Cardinals?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the answer to how do you break the ice is by breaking it. And, again, you want to do a little bit of judging. Sometimes people are just out for an evening on the town with their friends, and they're not looking for necessarily to buy a piece of art or whatever. But that doesn't mean that you can't approach them and interact with them. And my approach to doing this in the gallery is to just do it. If I have a group of people walk into the gallery, I will spring up to the front door, and they may even be chatting amongst themselves quietly, and I'll just introduce myself, welcome them to the gallery, give them my name, and I'm doing it in a personable way. And you'll be surprised. People are not only very willing to come out of their shell. That's why they're out. That they love interacting with people. And if you're, especially if you're the artist and you have something potentially interesting to share with them, they're going to be more than excited to hear what you have to say. And it may not be a long interaction. You may just kind of have a little opportunity to interact and like say, judge how much interaction they want, and then go from there. But I think it's just putting yourself forward and making that attempt, and you'll be surprised how easy it is to break into those groups of people and start a conversation. And really, a lot of times there's a great dynamic that occurs when there's a group of people that come in, because you'll have various members of that party start to play off of one another and joke together and joke with you, and it can turn into an even better conversation than we would have had if it was just someone walking in individually.
I don't want to get into genders here too much, but I think women have an advantage over men to some extent. I notice this with my wife, for instance, when we're out. She can see a total stranger and say, I love your hair, where'd you get those shoes? I love that brooch you're wearing.
Yeah, guys, be careful with this, because if we men start doing that, we get into all kinds of trouble.
Right, but women have a social style that allows them to just be friendly with a total stranger over some shared experience of being a female in particular, that allows you to open the door to a conversation over something else. And as a male, you can do that. It's just you have to be a little more circumspect. I just can't imagine telling you, Jason, that's a really nice looking brooch you're wearing. But if you were wearing a really cool looking pair of shoes, I wouldn't be shy at all about saying, wow, those are cool. I like those. Just start the conversation. What I'm really getting at is look for a way to break the ice with somebody that, in a way that's a question to them or a compliment to them. Either one of those two things, you've shown interest in that person. And unless they are totally just like, hey, leave me alone, I'm with my group, and they're going to respond to you, and that can be the icebreaker that you're looking for that starts the ball rolling. That I guarantee if the ball rolls within a few questions, it's going to be, so what do you do? I'm the artist. Would you like to see some of my art? It's right over here. Whatever the case might be. Look, be observant. Everybody's got something unique about them that you should be able to perhaps point out. If it's a person who's really tall, I guarantee you they don't want to hear a comment about them being really tall. In fact, they'll be probably put off. You probably be pleasantly surprised to have them say something to somebody who's really tall or some other obvious physical characteristic that anybody can see. Instead, look for something different and go to that. That person will embrace the fact that you see something about them other than the obvious. And again, practice thinking about what you're doing and try these things. You're your own worst enemy. You're not trying these things. So get out of your own way, get out of your comfort zone, start doing some of these things. You're going to have success.
Barney, you got the last word on that. We've run down the clock, and it's been a great conversation. We appreciate all of your input and questions. If you have additional questions, you want to post them to the Google Plus page where you signed up. We always try and take a look at that. It may take a day or two for us to get back to you, but this is salesmanship. I know it can feel like it's a dirty word to artists, and they don't want to do it. But if you can start to incorporate even just some of the principles of being a good and service-oriented salesperson to your potential clients, it's going to dramatically improve your success in your art career. So I'd encourage you to become a student of salesmanship, even if you don't think of yourself as a salesperson per se. But just start incorporating a little bit, and again, you don't have to do it all at once, but just a little bit here and a little bit there, and you'll start to see dramatic improvements. Barney, as always, it's been a pleasure.
Likewise, Jason. I can't wait till next month, and happy
well,
Thanksgiving to all of our U.S.-based friends and followers here.
Absolutely, and a good holiday season coming up, and we'll have another broadcast coming up second Tuesday of December.
Yep.
And we'll probably by then, Barney, work on coming up with our schedule and top list of topics for the 2015 broadcasts. So
let's throw it out there to our audience. If there's a topic that we haven't covered or we haven't covered enough that you think you'd like to hear us talk about, send that request to Jason at XanaduGallery.com, and we'll put it in the mix. We'd love to have some feedback from you on where you'd like to see
future topic ideas. Absolutely.
I would like to mention, if you look at the URL at the bottom of the screen, I've got a sale going on that includes an MP3, a free MP3 audio download for my new book, How to Sell Art to Interior Designers, and that's only on through November 21st. So if you're interested in buying that book and you want to get the MP3 audio download that comes with it, go to that barneydavey.com/designers link, and it'll take you to the page where you can learn more about it and order it if you want to.
Awesome. All right, everybody.
Promotion.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us this evening. It's always fun to have you along, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next broadcast. We'll look forward to seeing your comments on our respective blogs, and look forward to being in touch. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Peace out.